Hello, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you. Yes, you know who you are. Thank you for tuning in today to this next edition of The Gathering Place. I'm Tom Ray, and we're so glad you could join us today. And we asked for you to share this with others and let them in on the good news that's going on here on The Gathering Place. And also, we encourage you to like on this, to share it, to comment on it. We want your feedback. We can even accept your feedback in real time so that we can respond and all of that. We appreciate all of that. So I want to introduce you to our hosts of the Gathering Place. We have Ben and Talora Bookie, and then we have Ken Shelton. And we're excited about what we're going to bring you today that will hopefully bring help and wellness to your life. So without further ado, Ken, take it away.
Ben has had his mind firmly fixed on helping people get through difficult times. Seems like a noble thing, but that's what he does with his life. And he just happened to marry a woman that wants to do the same thing. And so Ben and Talora have desired that for last week, this week, and maybe for who knows, the next few weeks, we're going to be discussing how we handle the holidays and how we stay emotionally and mentally well. In other words, how we stay sane when our family comes over. That's what I'm trying to say. It's easy. When I was a kid, it was great, man. I mean, every holiday was amazing. It's just like I just wanted my cousins over. We were just gonna goof off, get in people's way, get yelled at, eat turkey, eat food. It was, and then somebody got divorced when I was a teenager.
Uh-oh.
And then, then only half that family could come over. And then somebody else got a divorce, and then somebody was living with somebody. And then, oh my, it wasn't as much fun anymore because their parents came over with sad looks instead of happiness, and somebody forgot the sweet potato casserole because they were preoccupied, and then somebody got killed.
Mm,
Oh, that was hard. Shot right in the face, literally.
Mm.
My
wow.
first cousin, yes, killed by his next door neighbor. Now, the holidays are not quite as much fun going through that period of time. And then one of our family patriarchs died. That was hard. And now we're just trying to hold everybody together. And then some of our cousins didn't handle going into early adulthood well. And so their parents were upset and they were acting bizarre. And then one of the cousins' spouse just really loved to get drunk and drive, and they killed somebody and wound up in jail for
Mm,
the rest of their lives. So, I mean, you know, now things trigger people. Now, of course, we're the cousins are older, and what we do is we gather in our separate camps. So, my family, me, my wife, my kids, their husbands, their kids, all 17 of us, we get together. And then my sister's family and her group, but sometimes we join our families together. That's good, you know. But then some of my cousins, they get in their group and they get in and that's probably logical too, because if we were all together, we'd have to rent a cabin in the Smokies. Or maybe we'd have to rent the Smokies because there are a lot. What I'm trying to say is it starts out fun and it turns green, just like uh, the casserole that you left out too long and now is covered with that green hair all over it. If you've ever seen that, that's not good, and it can ruin the holidays. One time, I went to a certain relative's house, and my wife and I were watching their kids, and uh, I knew there was a cake in that cake plate up there, and I lifted the cover, and the green mold went flying through the air.
oh,
Ugh. So anyway, the holidays are good. They're great. We want you to stay happy and healthy. And Ben and Talora know how to help us do that. And
I just
so,
have a
for the balance of our time, Ben and Talora are going to lead this discussion, and Tom and I will chime in when we feel
Oops.
it's necessary or when we've been asked a question because our teachers are now on board. Ben and
Well,
Tulare.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Were they growing penicillin? Is that why that they were? I'm just wondering. Is that the mold thing?
There was nothing scientific about it.
Okay. Okay. I'm just giving them some credit. I'm just
The
giving them
only
some credit.
scientific thing was the poor soul who ate it and had to go to the hospital for toe jam poisoning, or was that
Toe jam?
salamander poisoning? That's what.
Oh,
Come on, over
that's
here. Get in. Get in. Go on.
Ben, you're fading on me.
Am
uh-oh.
I?
Yes.
My light went all screwy.
Oh, don't you hate that? Okay, go ahead, guys. Let's talk about it.
So my
Staying emotionally well during the holidays.
I think a big thing for especially this season is talking about politics, right?
Right.
Maybe that discussion shouldn't even just don't even do it. Just don't even do it, right? When you sit down at the table, let's talk about turkey. Let's not talk about, you know, who you voted for or who you didn't vote for and why you didn't vote. You know, just leave it at rest and save it for a time where you want to debate.
Oh, that, but there's always one person
Yes.
who can't
Yes.
wait to bring it up.
Mhm.
He's
I
looking for the opening, like that fullback that's running with the football. He's just looking for an opening, and we're all praying.
You can say, well, it's funny you said that. Have you tried the mashed potatoes?
Yep. Yes. Or did you notice the magnolias are not in bloom?
Yeah.
Just something random.
I think that's always the way to do that, right? Just
Yeah.
The mashed
divert
potatoes
the
are a little
conversation.
salty. Yeah.
I remember one 4th of July, we had some family over, and of course, I was a dumb teenager. I was about 14 or 15 years old, and I had a lot of other things on my mind instead of, just thinking about other people's feelings. And everybody left, and my mother was in the downstairs family room talking with one of my uncles and aunts, and somebody mentioned one of my cousins had a spouse. I mentioned her name, I, and I said, "Oh God, I can't stand her. I hate her." That's not an awful thing to say for anybody. I knew better than that. I think I was pushing the limit. I was with my mom, my aunt, and my uncle. It just went silent, and then I remembered, oh yeah, it's their son that's dating that girl,
Oh my
and I
God.
just said I hated, and it was like total silence, and then I said, I got to go, and then I left. It was so awkward.
It's time for me to move on.
Yeah.
Right?
What do you do? Let me ask you this, Ben. What does a person do if they knowingly struggle with social interaction and they're going to have to get together with a group?
Mm-hmm.
They've not sought help. They don't believe they need help until the moment arrives and they're going to get together, and they're hostile to their spouse. They're anxious. They have a deadpan look on their face, and they're getting ready to go inside.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do?
Well, and that happens to a lot of people, and obviously, too late to get help, right? But, um, you know, part of it is if you know that's you need to prepare ahead of time, and not even like going to therapy and dealing with maybe any underlying social anxiety or whatever may be going on, but um, I mean, we all know ourselves if we really pay attention, right? We know what we need to do something like that. And a lot of times it's just, maybe you're introverted and maybe that's just it. And it takes a lot of energy out of you to have social engagement. And that's fine. So you need to, you know, prepare, rest before that, whatever that looks like for you. If you're already there and you're already anxious, so simple things, we teach people a lot grounding techniques, right? If you're standing there and just get your feet, make sure your feet are on the floor, notice that are on the ground, make sure you notice your feet are on the ground. And you can look around, maybe say it out loud. You may not be able to if there's a lot of people around, but just like, just use your five senses. you know Name something I can see, something I can touch, something I can hear, something I can smell, something I can taste, or something you like to taste of. And just kind of keep running through that, especially if you're able to say it out loud. That really just physically grounds us, but it also emotionally grounds us. And you can do that anywhere. You can do that when you're standing in line at Meijer or Walmart, whatever you need to do. And you should notice just some of those feelings are coming down, um, so that you're not taking it out on your spouse. They don't appreciate that.
Right.
Promise that, right? And it actually is
But
making
do
your
you know
anxiety
that?
worse.
Do you know that?
So, but it actually is making if your spouse is getting upset with you because of how you're behaving, you're actually making yourself more anxious.
That's right.
So, and sometimes we were like, oh, I got to get this out, right? Or you're going to complain about it to everybody who will listen that you have to go do this event. Makes you feel worse. We think it's helpful. Venting is never helpful. So processing it, talking about it in a healthy way could be useful, but just complaining actually makes us feel worse.
Let's
I
talk
think
about some family situations. Like I'm thinking blended families, or not not just families, but work parties. When a spouse or a friend is invited along into a group of people that they don't know or don't know well, or new people are going to be there for the first time, and they're already anxious, and so now this person's already anxious too, and
Mhm.
it's almost like hot potato with the emotions. So sometimes I think knowing who's going to be there, not always possible, but knowing who's going to be there. But when you get there and you've been perfectly at ease in your own territory, in your own social group, and I've seen this a lot with church people who are very at ease with their church people who were raised up in church, right? And then
Mhm.
you come in a setting where all of a sudden, say they were raised in a church setting like ours, where there was total abstinence, nobody drank. And then now you're invited to an event where everybody's drinking and they keep offering you. And, as Jim Gaffigan says, liquor, drinking is the only thing that people ask you about if you're not doing. You don't drink? Why? Like they don't ask that about mashed potatoes. You don't eat mashed potatoes anymore? What gives, So when you walk into a situation, I know there are people watching. I know there are, or that will watch that. And they may not admit it, but when they go into a different setting, people that they don't know, they're perfectly fine with. They're 400 people, but they get on that group of 7, and they're going to fall apart. And
I,
you mentioned some things that I think are extremely helpful. But Laura's got her hand raised.
yeah, sorry. I think that driving yourself, right? Into like instead of riding with people, so then you can leave. You don't have to stay, right? You can engage and sometimes Ben and I will talk before we even go someplace and just say, we're only staying for this long. You know, when we go in, and then you already have a plan in your head about what your departure looks like. Also, you don't have to do everything. You can release yourself from people pleasing and feel like that you have to be part of everything you're invited to. You don't.
Mm, that's really powerful because I think people feel that if they don't join in, they're going to be looked at as even more odd. But what you're saying is that it makes perfect sense to be able to say to people that you love, I don't feel like I should go tonight. Most of the time in your own family unit, say Tom, Gina, your kids, you're going to a situation and Gina says to Tom, I just don't really want to go tonight. I just don't feel like I want to do that. And everybody's expecting Gina and her famous Jello mold casserole thing, whatever it is, whatever they call it, and not that she makes one, but a spouse's first response is what? Well, I mean, you always go to these things. What gives? You've got exactly 7 minutes to be out the door before you're late getting there, and they waited until that time to tell you because they were afraid to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
How do you handle that, Tom?
Yes, dear.
Well, I don't mean you, but how would you say? Yeah, you.
Yeah, but seriously, I think oftentimes it's that social pressure for us as a family unit often to be wherever that place is, and we want each other to often suck it up and and go to these events, even though it could cause severe anxiety for the other person. Thinking that hey, it should go just fine, and chances are it might, but then if the worst fears may come up and develop and it could be a catastrophe. So I think it's perfectly okay for a person to say no, and we've got to be able to say no and feel good about it, and not worry about what the other people think. Sometimes things are just the way they are. Maybe it's an internal thing. Maybe it's just how I'm feeling right now, or I've been missing a past loved one that's not going to be at this gathering. Any number of those things. We don't always know the exact reason why our spouse may or may not want to go to an event, but we
But in
need to
that
give them
7 minutes,
grace
it's
to
hard
do
to
it.
figure out, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just like I know for me, I've learned to come to a place where I will ask a couple of questions just to kind of search, what's the issue here. Maybe it's something I can resolve. Maybe it's something I already have foresight about that I can, give information for. Um, Otherwise, it's like, okay, I understand. I'll go and have fun, and I will express your concern for not being able to be there, and we'll move on. And that's kind of the way it needs to be. But a lot of times, or especially around the holidays, especially with family, especially with someone waiting for that jello casserole, as you said, and you know, where's that at? How come that wasn't made? And you know, and so I know that there's a lot of social anxiety that can come with that, but we got to be willing to um, set up an environment that's going to be a beautiful for everyone. I just who was it back in the day who said, "Can't we all just get along?"
Oh, Rodney
Martin.
King.
Rodney King, that's who it was.
Oh, Rodney King. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I said Martin Luther.
Oh, yeah.
I so just want us all to get along, but
Yeah.
I know that there are things, there's quirks, there's opinions, and all those things that get in the way. But I remember when I first got married that we were doing a Thanksgiving, for instance, at my in-laws, and then one at my family's house, and I was like, this is awesome. you know and I thought it was always great, but the families got bigger, and stress or different things happen through the family. A lot of things like Ken shared at the beginning of this podcast, and it just splinters the family getting together, and we end up just having our own little camp. And I guess there's nothing wrong with that, but I always looked forward to the holidays of getting with all of our families so we could be together to cherish each other, because life is so short, and wanting to take advantage of those that we love. But sometimes there's just too many elephants in the room that have to be addressed, and until they are,
I
there
have a
can be no
question.
peace. Yeah.
I'm so sorry, Tom. But I have a question, Ben and Laura, about uh, explain to me and probably our viewers, how is it that a person's chemistry might change at certain points in their lives and their behavior will follow in that chemical change, hormonal change that takes place at really important times? I mean, they need to be somewhere, they need to behave in a particular or, you know, typical fashion, but inside things are different when they had that birthday. Um, can you talk to us a little bit about that? I don't know what those birthdays are typically. I mean, I know that we say adolescence to early adulthood, and then to adulthood, and then to senior adulthood, but really it could be anywhere in there.
Mhm.
And what's the difference between just like being emotionally upset one day and actually having some chemical changes going on in your body? Does that mean you're crazy?
Well, I think we just all know just experientially, right? Like the things happen. I mean, women end up going through menopause at some point, but even men have those biological changes that happen. Laura was reading an article, and I'd read it before too, talking about like, there's two distinct times where we age. Was it our chromosomes? Laura, do you remember?
I
Can't
I
remember.
think so. I think it's like
Yeah, and it was like 40
We're heavy on
something,
science over here,
60.
folks.
Yeah, I
I'm
know.
like,
But you can look it up yourself if you're into science.
mhm.
But I mean, a lot of these things do happen. We even talk like in decades, right? Like we talk about people in their 20s tend to act this way. People in their 30s, they're getting into adulthood and family, so like their perception of life and what they are willing to do changes. And in your 40s, you start not to care so much about what other people think anymore. And then your 50s, you care even less. And by the time you're 60, like I mean, so even our attitudes change over time. And maybe there's, a chemical connection to that too. I don't know, but I think a lot of it is just our lived experience and recognizing like, life is short. Like I don't have to care about certain things. But we learn to shift our expectations,
That's good.
and hopefully we could learn to do that sooner. And part of that really is being aware of like what actually are my expectations. If you're married, or dating or engaged, whatever. I mean, talking to the other about like, well, what are our expectations for this, right? We want to be well. We're talking about wellness. Like, what does wellness look like in the holiday season? And and making sure we're on the same page about that, because maybe in your 20s, you can go to a party every weekend, and that's great and you love it. It's a little harder in your 30s, and like um Laura and I, we're in our, well, I'm in my 40s, she's not. But so I mean, we're all kind of getting up there, right? But I don't want to do the same things that I did in my 20s, and I just don't have that much energy, right? Physically our bodies are wearing down, and so what do we do about that? And So really learning, what are, those expectations, what can we actually physically do at this point in life, and what are we even willing to do is important. I mean, it's kind of like what Tom and what Ken you were talking about in the beginning. All of those things do change, and we still have that urge, right? Like I remember, I live in my grandma's house, right? So this is where we all used to gather, and we don't anymore. Not like that. My cousins aren't here. Obviously my grandparents have passed. So like Thanksgiving we are doing it here, like, but my parents will be here, my sister will be here, our kids will be here, but it's different. We don't see that extended family anymore. And Dolores' family was the same thing. Like they used to rent a hall, there were so many of them. And talking, circling back to our beginning, right? We were talking about that anxiety about it. Like I would, like, holy cow, like there's a million people at this thing and lots of chaos. And it was a lot, right? I was definitely not prepared for that, the first time I went. Not that it was Tora's fault. Like I think she told me what it was going to, well, there's a lot of people there. I mean, we rent a hall, like that should include me in, right? I was used to my family where there's like, 15 people at most. That's a full house. So, but having that preparation is important before we get into that. So I've talked a lot, I know, but
No, you're doing great. No, it's really important because the shifting of the times in our lives where certain holidays had specific meaning and we expect that to be there and it's not there.
Mhm.
But then also something deeper. Uh, Sometimes there are people who do have some form of mental illness and they don't know it.
mhm.
I was reading Jane Pauley's interview back from a number of years ago. If you don't know Jane Pauley, she's a news correspondent and the host of CBS Sunday Mornings, and she's been on television for a very long time. And she said that when I was 49, everything was great. When I hit 50, things went haywire, and I found out that I was bipolar.
She thought she was what? I'm sorry.
Bipolar.
Bipolar.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
her behavior started getting more and more adrift, afloat from her typical personality. And she finally saw a psychiatrist who wanted to give her a cover story. And you can tell your viewers that it's a thyroid problem. And she said, no, I'm not going to do that because, if I'm going to have a situation, I have the chance to affect millions of people. And I'm going to talk about my situation. And I mean, kudos to her because she nailed that stigma. She really addressed it because for so long there was a stigma with that. But that directly affects what we're talking about here. People that we've known, and suddenly they begin to behave differently. And we go home and we say, what was that? Did you notice that? Yeah, it seemed off. We say they seemed off. But then we go back again and it's that again. Are there certain are there certain ages or certain seasons in a person's life where, say, in teenage or adulthood, any range in there, where a person is more likely to experience a mental health shift in some way?
Well, typically, like bipolar and like schizophrenia, those type of mental illnesses, they typically develop between like the 18 to the early 20s. There's a lot of research on it too. I think that um, it's connected more to being out on your own, kind of like that pressure and Ben.
Substance use,
No,
As a
you
kid.
just look like your eyes look like they were closing. I was like,
No, I was looking at.
anybody else see
I was
that?
trying to follow our comments on the. the live
Oh, okay.
stream.
Sorry. I thought he was sleeping.
No,
But I think that,
that's Ken's job.
yeah.
So
I'll do that.
But
I have to get that eye surgery, where they do
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah,
I'm
the
putting
hoods.
it off for 3 years. And the reason being is I've seen so many people that are perpetually frightened and alarmed. I don't want to have that happen. But the last time I went to the ophthalmologist, she said, have you ever thought about, she just brought it up. Have you ever thought about maybe having that eye surgery where and she named it? And I said, why? Why are you bringing that up? I was a little defensive about that. She said, you got a lot to work with up there.
Are you
And I
saying
went
my
home and
eyes
I
are
said,
fat? Are you
I
saying my
do.
eyes are fat?
When you can pull your eyelid out and wrap it around your ear, you probably need to get that thing trimmed back. So it might look like I'm asleep, but actually, it's just, I'm Garfield. I can't help it.
Nice.
So let's get back on track here. So those ages, those times.
Yeah. The 18 to 22 or early 20s, a lot of it's connected to, your body fully develops, or your brain fully develops typically around the age of 25. So there's still some of that growth so some people, like you were saying, she was what, 50?
49, 50, yeah.
49 when she was diagnosed. She probably learned how to manage it.
Probably.
Or it was a lesser of the, like just say on a scale of 1 to 5, maybe it's a 1 where it wasn't as severe. But over time too, if you notice, people with mental illness tend to, their illnesses tend to progress too.
Yes. Now let's bring it down a little bit. What about something that seems not to be mental illness? Something like PTSD or something like ADHD or anxiety disorders,
Right.
or just a problem with depression. It's not, no, I don't have, I'm not, it's not a big deal. I just have a problem with depression every now and then. People say that, right? So, what about those things? Are there times when they might manifest? Is it predictable, or is it just anytime, any place, anybody?
Well, I mean, we don't know when the PTSD might hit us, right? Because we can't predict traumas necessarily. So, I mean, anything could happen at any time, and we may end up with PTSD after that. We might not. I mean, you can have trauma without PTSD, but ADHD you have to have had as a child, but it can persist, right?
Smile and wave.
So, anxiety can pop up at any age. Depression can come on at any age, so if you know that you've had those experiences before, and this may be helpful to work through with a therapist or even a life coach or something, to like, what are my triggers, and figuring that out, and like, what do I do to prepare for those triggers, right? I mean, if you know from your trauma that maybe certain people are triggers, or certain times of the year are triggers, you got to have a plan for that. And what are you going to do? And, one of the things that, I preach a lot to people, but, it's just that idea of rest, especially like when we're looking at wellness during this time. I love the concept of Sabbath rest. I mean, God gave us that right in the beginning, right? He creates for 6 days, day 7, he rests, right? When you look at the Old Testament, right? I mean, it wasn't just that one day a week, right? Every 7 years, like, they were having a year of Sabbath rest. a year, right? You know, and there are other times, you know, where really when you look at, you know, throughout that, God's like rest, right? And we talk a lot about like how Jesus would get away, right? And you know, when the crowds were a lot, right? And he needed to go away. He needed to be, you know, just alone with his Father praying. I mean, that was Jesus practicing wellness. And you know, so who are we, right? In that sense, to think that we don't need that. But we have this like we gotta go, 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 rush, 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 rush. We can't stop because we have to, you know, meet everybody's expectations. We have to, you know, do all of the commitments that we've made because who else is going to do it?
Well, and I wonder, the Bible verse I was going to share tonight was in Matthew chapter 11, verse 28, right? It says, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, because I am lowly and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." And the title of this little section in my book, or in my book, my Bible, it says, "The Son gives knowledge and rest." So he's saying it's okay. It's okay to rest, and it's okay to rest in him, right? And to recognize that we need rest. Release yourself from that expectation that you have to take on everything. You don't have to take on everything.
Right. What I hear you and Ben saying a lot, and Tom brought it up in his comments, is this idea of giving people permission to not do a thing. I mean, if we're adults, or even if it's our kids, you know, shut up, I don't care, get in the car. You know, I mean, it's what, you know, I want to give you permission right now. Okay. Everybody that's going to watch this, you can be late. Okay. I want you to know that it's not a character problem. You can show up late. You want to be 15 minutes late. If somebody came to you for 7 minutes before it was time to leave and said, I don't want to go. Listen, they're more important than being there on time. I just want you to know that.
Mm-hmm.
You may feel responsible to be there on time. So, but no, just slow it down. Just say you had a flat tire. Lie if you have to. No, I'm serious about this. Lie if you have to. If that person in your family is going through something and they haven't given you any time and you're shocked and not prepared, well, let the party go. I can't be there. I'll explain it to you later. We'll be late. Now, you might have 5 other people that are very disappointed, need to think on your feet. Bob, why don't you take the kids, and me and Joy will be there in a little bit, okay? Problem solved. Instead of, what? I have worked for 2 days. You know, which is something that probably we all have done. I have not done that because I haven't worked more than 20 minutes in the kitchen ever in my life. So it's not a big deal with me. But you're talking about it's okay. There are boundaries that we can set. People resist the idea of boundaries. You know that, right? I mean, you guys are mental health workers. You know that we who are not mental health workers, we do not like the word boundaries.
Well, there's a reason there's thousands of books about boundaries, and more are coming out every week.
Right.
It is a significant issue, and unfortunately, you know, especially, you know, I mean, I can only speak to our culture, but you know, they reward you not having boundaries.
Yeah.
They reward you overdoing and overworking. We celebrate it as if that's such a good thing. And there's certainly a shift where people are like, okay, like we can't keep doing this. And people certainly talk about it more. It wasn't talked about, you know, so much even 20 years ago, 10 years ago. It's at the forefront now, but you know, is anybody really seeing a shift in our culture? I mean, it's probably going, maybe it'll come, but you know, individually, how do we do that? And again, you know, it's a good word that you use, Ken, like permission. You know, give yourself permission to set boundaries, and boundaries are awesome when we do it. It's terrifying to start out and try to do that and just be like, no is scary. It's the scariest word that people know. That's a pun. That was pretty funny. I didn't do it on purpose.
Yeah, it hit
But
me right there.
So
Right on my nose. Sorry.
yeah. So we had a question pop up, but yeah. You know, how do we make it okay for ourselves to set boundaries when we expect more out of ourselves and try to be that one for everyone, right? That is big, right? Because we put that pressure on ourselves, probably because we learned along the way, maybe even in childhood, that we have to do that. We have to be that. You know, and again, like our church culture certainly celebrates that, right? Like people who are there, you know, 10 days a week, you know, working, and we're like, that's so great. Like, you know, they're such a hard worker and we love that. And, you know, sometimes people do that because we have this fear, like, if I don't do it, who else will?
Well, there's that, but also, isn't it true that a lot of people who come to church regularly are people pleasers?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, I know that's news, but a lot of church people are people pleasers because somehow we've equated Christian with nice and yes.
Yeah. Well, and like we think that, you know, that means we're being loving.
Right.
And, you know, when we really sit and if we can take the time, which is hard, to sit and like, okay, like, is that actually loving? Or is that me just working myself into the ground, doing things that maybe I don't need to do? Maybe other people need to do. Or, you know, maybe it is an issue of pride. Like, oh, you know, I do all this stuff. This is so great. And, you know, it's hard to separate all of that out in our own brains. And sometimes that is where we need that really good friend who will say, call us out. It's got to be somebody you're going to listen to, of course, right? You know, but or a therapist, right? You know, I kind of chuckle. Well, I actually do it out loud. I would say I do it internally, but sometimes I just do it out loud because people are like, you're the only person who challenges me, and I don't get mad at them. Sometimes people do get mad at me. I'm okay with that too, but you know, but we don't have a lot of those people that we really allow to do that we trust to do that, but we really have to spend that time reflecting what is the reason. I mean, it is so hard to set boundaries, and we have these expectations we put on ourselves. I do it. I'm just as guilty as everybody else, right? Laura's already told me I have to be nice on Thanksgiving, right? Because I'm cooking and everybody's coming here, right? So my expectations are like, we're gonna, I talked about this last week or the week before, right?
It's not that I can't cook, please. It's not that I can't cook. It's just been like
vacation mug here, right? Because there's a reason that's my favorite movie, right? Because he has such high expectations. They're gonna have a perfect Christmas, right? And I'm guilty of that. I recognize that. And guess what? People don't live up to my expectations. I don't even, all right? So
but Christmas comes one day a year. Thanksgiving is one day a year. Don't blow that day.
Yeah.
Right?
But I think
if I can chime in.
Yeah, if I can chime in.
We're all jumping in at once. Okay. To Laura, go ahead.
Well, I don't want to. I'm just going to say this real fast. So, Tom, I want to hear what Tom says. But boundaries. If we don't create those boundaries, we develop resentment towards people. Instead of us recognizing that we needed to create those boundaries because we are allowing things to happen or to occur, or we're putting ourselves out there, we instead blame other people and start resenting them because then it feels intrusive. They're intruding on my life. Well, you offered your life, you offered yourself to that situation. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tom.
That's
Go ahead.
good. And to tag off that, and I think it connects what Kim was talking about earlier, that maybe in the early years of us getting together on that one day a year, there's a snapshot of maybe the feeling and the tradition, and maybe there's a matriarch or patriarch that kind of set that tradition up, and now they're gone, and we're trying to put the bunny back in the box, and and try to make this thing work like it had been before. But it's different, and it comes to back to the expectation that we have when we go into a an event that we only do once a year, and chances are we've not seen these family members for a whole year. And so Lord knows what we've all encountered or endured over the course of that year. Maybe we've experienced loss on a personal level, whatever that may be, from jobs to a loved one. But it's all of those things, and then trying to perform that one day a year at this family event. When you talked about, Taloria, about setting those boundaries and creating a safe space for yourself, and in not getting caught up in the expectations of others. We want to be a team player, but it can't be at our expense in regards to our mental health. And so I think all those things are worth evaluating, and then maybe evaluate again that what we're trying to capture again, it's probably something that's just for the scrapbooks and not something for today, that we can't recapture that moment again that happened. We have to create a new memory and create a new experience, uh, because things have obviously changed, and that's hard to deal with. As we get older, we like things differently. Or how about this? We put up with a family member's mess in the early years, but now we've come to a point where we're not going to tolerate that anymore.
Mhm.
And
Fair
so
enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
and so we've just changed in that way. And so but it's an adjustment for everybody, and we're all going through this at the exact same time, pretty much, over the course of our life. And so how can we create an environment for our kids, though? That's the thing. Creating an environment for our kids so that they can remember Thanksgiving and Christmas and different dates of the year that are fun, that create that moment for them. Because I feel like we're losing that in this day and age.
Yeah.
I learn a lot from my kids. My adult children, they do life, I think, much more thoroughly than my wife and I did when our kids were little. And by that, I mean their lives were captive to my schedule. I was a pastor. And so, of a small, I started a church with 6 people, and in a rural to suburban town, back when we started, it was kind of semi-rural actually. And, we just had to make things happen. You've got to raise money. You've got to make things fun. You've got to make things spiritual. You have to. But we didn't put that pressure on our kids. Like we didn't make them feel like you have to do this with us. It's just that it's time to go. And I remember, I'll never forget one day. Kitty and I came down the hall, and here are our kids playing with the big Barbie house and the big car and all the things they've got there on the lobby on the linoleum floor, right? And we overhear our oldest daughter saying, "Zoom, zoom, Mama's really sad." Why is Mama sad? Because Dad is yelling because we're late for church. We have to hurry. And here we are standing right around the corner, you know. Oh, I think we might take a look at that, you know. But you know, I barely had a desk calendar. My kids all have online calendars and their kids have access to it. You know, they can, what are we doing on the 15th? Go look at the calendar. Oh, you know what, Mom, I've got to be at that. Put it on the calendar. You know, let's talk about it. Let's make sure that we all know. So when I use the word permission, I think it's even further than just to say no. I don't think it has to be a yes or a no. I think it could be an I don't know.
Mhm.
I think we could give people permission to say, oh, well, I don't know that I want to do that this year. Can I think about it? Can we talk about it? It's so frustrating to people that just want to get it done.
Yeah.
And I'm one of the guys that wants to get it done. So I know, and you realize that all the pastors that started watching us have quit watching us now because they need everybody to say yes.
Well, I think
Church is that only place that exists entirely for spiritual and altruistic purposes that depends entirely on volunteers and donations.
Mhm.
one of the things about like people with anxiety or generalized anxiety disorder is that they will do like a half-hearted I'm coming, right? And maybe in their mind their intention is not to even go. So
Mhm.
it's like, well, maybe it would be easier to start. I always talk to people about rehearsing lines, right? Nobody knows when you're driving in your car who you're talking to because we all have that access to phones that aren't handheld anymore. So you can, just kind of maybe reiterate over and over again, thank you, but I am busy that day. And maybe busy's being at home and watching Hallmark movies, or maybe it's just having downtime, you
Now
know.
we know.
Yeah. Well, I love
Mhm.
in The Grinch That Stole Christmas, the one with Jim Carrey. He's sitting there, he says, oh, scheduled dinner with myself, can't miss that again, because we do need to schedule time for us for self-care.
Mhm.
How are you supposed to, I always like that saying where it says you cannot pour from an empty cup. And if you are a leader in ministry, which is probably both, you are pouring into the lives of people, and if you are empty,
Mhm.
there's no way that you can
Yeah.
pour into people.
And if you need to, I mean, talking with the calendars, right? Schedule a day of wellness, which might just be, it really might be like, I need to just sit around, watch Hallmark this season, right? Or whatever it might be. Because if you don't schedule it, other things will take up your time.
Yeah.
Right.
And wellness doesn't have, and resting and Sabbath, like none of that has to look like just sitting on the couch, right?
Mm-mm.
Or that
You
you're
know,
a wimp.
yeah, like I like, in the summer, like I like gardening. It's restful,
Mhm.
you know. Right now I'm in the in the midst of decorating for Christmas, so I have not fallen off a ladder yet, so that's good news. Um, but like it's enjoyable to me. Taking the lights down outside in January, not enjoyable. So it doesn't tend to get done, right? So
If
but
you drive through our yard around July 4th, you're going to find that there's still Christmas lights in several of the bushes and
but don't
trees.
drive through my yard. Like
Yeah,
that's
Let's
don't
get
drive through your. I'm sorry.
Independence
Drive.
Day lights.
Right,
right.
right. That are just happen to be green and red.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think we've about wrapped up our time here. It's been an hour and it's been fun. I think what we've said here is it's okay to try to figure it out on the fly if you have to.
Yeah.
And it's okay to upset people by saying, I don't feel I don't think I can do that right now, but it's nothing against you. And I think that that suffix in the conversation needs to be there. It's not about you, like you're breaking up with somebody. It's not you, but actually, you're saying, I don't want you to feel like I don't like you or I don't want to be with you, but I just need a little time to think it through. Well, people are going to wonder, well, what? Well, let them wonder.
Yeah.
People are wondering about you anyway.
Mm-hmm.
They've been wondering about me my whole life.
Well,
They'll never figure me out. But
you can say no, or I'm not able to without. You don't even have to have an excuse. We feel like
you shouldn't have to, right? You shouldn't say, "Oh, I can't come that night because I'm," and you go into the whole explanation. Say, I can't do it, man. Sorry, the calendar's full.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because we're afraid that they'll think we're just blowing them off or lying.
Mm-hmm.
But in truth, we don't have to tell them why.
Mm-mm.
I can't do it. Yeah.
No.
Well,
Well, that's the thing with those boundaries, right? We set. This is the thing with boundaries, right? The closer I am to you, the more I might want to give a reason,
Mhm.
right? But if I'm not that close to you, like, no is my boundary. I don't have to give an explanation, or if people are being rude about it, because sometimes people get rude about it, which then makes us feel bad because if we're people pleasers, right? And so it's okay,
I always have to check with my wife.
Well,
that's
I
the
mean,
answer.
that's legit, right?
Well, no, I mean, Steve asked me if I could come be part of the 75th, and I wanted to, but I know that my wife is recovering from a broken ankle and shoulder replacement surgery. And we were at the Fox in Detroit last night watching and hearing Jim Gaffigan, right? So we didn't know if we'd be able to. And the truth is, we probably wouldn't feel great in the morning. Not because we're out doing stupid stuff, but just because we're 70,
Yeah.
And you can say, 70 is a new 50 or however you want to say that, but that's a bunch of BS, actually. 70 has always been and will always be 70.
Mm-hmm.
And it might be an exception for you. But the point I'm trying to make is that have somebody you got to check with. I need to check my calendar. And then you're honest. Nobody really knows right at first what we've got to do.
Yeah.
It's okay. And hey, I love people. I love you. I love Steve. But if you called me up and said, "Hey, listen, man, I need you to come over," I was like, I don't know, man. I've got to look at my calendar. And I'm the guy that when I get a new calendar, I backfill it so I feel effective. I put in, oh yeah, last July I did these things. Wow, look what I did, and then I leave it and I find it in a month. But there can be all kinds of reasons. But boundaries and permission,
Mm-hmm.
and then say yes. What are some other ways, Tom? And then maybe you could wrap it up for us. Some other ways that we could identify and say, well, I don't know. I mean, we don't want to hurt people.
Right.
No, and I think it's in the way we do things, but we have to, when we speak, we have to be sure about what we're saying, because oftentimes it's in the way we say something that will leave room for more discussion on that thing. So if I was to say, I'm not going to be able to make it, there's this inflection in my voice that kind of sounds like, oh no, why? And then you have to give an answer, and then you sound unsure of yourself and all of that. So I think working on that part of, how we speak and how we present. And of course, this episode today was not about how do you get out of going to family events.
Actually, I think it's anonymous.
But but a lot of times there's a lot of pressure when the holidays come up, and what do we do with that? And so I think that if we can, let's do our best to be there, obviously, because it only happens once a year, and taking advantage of that. But at the same time, learning that it is okay to say no. I'm just not going to be able to make it this year, and be okay with that. There's some people who are manipulated by their family members. And if you are easily controlled in that area, it's going to be difficult for you to, to say no because you don't want to let that person down. But again, it goes back to that self-care that Laura talked about. It is, what's necessary for you. Do you feel there's a boundary there that you don't think that you can cross today? Then set that up and just tell the person, let them know. But at the same time, a lot of times, with our anxiety and things on the rise, perhaps it's just some fears that we think is going to happen. And so give some time, talk to your spouse or something of that nature, to say, hey, is this thinking rational? Am I thinking in the right way here, or am I just flooded with fears that this one family member of ours is going to bring something up like politics or something like that that's going to set me off, or if someone's going to ask me about why I lost my job, or any number of things. But a lot of things we go into it with all these false senses, and it ruins an opportunity for a wonderful time that could happen if we didn't. So I think maybe talking to a spouse, to maybe rationalize those feelings going into it. But that's just kind of some 2 cents, my 2 cents on that. Um, what do you think?
Well, Ben, how can we get a hold of you and Laura?
So easiest way is our website, quiescounseling.com, QUIES counseling.com. Our email, our phone, our fax is on there if you like to fax. I don't know who does, but we have one. So, but yeah, you can get all of our information right through there. You can link to our Facebook page and everything.
Tom, how about you?
Hey, simply just go to Pastor Tom Pastor Tom at gmail.com. I'm
Pastor
sorry,
Tom at
Pastor
gmail.com.
Tom Ray, REA, Pastor Tom Ray at gmail.com. That's it.
And if you want to get a hold of me, right here on Facebook or YouTube, just leave me a message. I'll get back with you if at all possible. Well, we covered a lot of territory, and I take responsibility for that. And partly because I am in the midst of writing an article on this very subject. And I have
You're
to
welcome.
And so I gained a lot of knowledge from you all and that's one thing I love about our time together is that there's such great input, and I appreciate all of you so very much. Just in case our viewers are wondering, our shows are completely unscripted. And so, when we begin, we say we have a goal and we might meet it, but generally we will land on it at some point in our discussion. We try our best. If there's a topic you'd like us to discuss, let us know and we'll do our best. To Laura, Ben, you got to say anything else you want to say?
No, other than, everybody, at least who's in the United States, have a great Thanksgiving week. If you're not certain about it, rewatch tonight, watch last week, watch the week before. There's a lot of good information in all of those episodes and some of our past ones, all of which are on the YouTube page. So
that's right. All right. God bless you. And we thank you so much for taking the time every Sunday night to show up right here. And you may feel like you're the only one, but actually we have about 400 or 500 people every week that tune in and maybe stay for a minute or maybe stay for 15, and some stay for the whole hour. But we ask you to invite your friends, let them know that we're talking about important things here. Thanks for taking your time. God bless you and happy Thanksgiving. Tom wanted to lead us out with a Thanksgiving prayer. Would you do that?
Yeah, love to. Father, we thank you for Jesus. Lord, we thank you, God, for providing a way, Lord, that we could be in relationship with you, and for your costs that you paid on the cross, dear Father, for us. We thank you for salvation. We thank you for freedom. We thank you for redemption. And Father, I just pray over the course of this week, Father, specifically, Lord, that we will focus on the things that we do have and the way that you have blessed us, instead of being discontented in our hearts, dear Father. Give us a desire, Lord, to seek you and to give you praise and to give you thanks for the many blessings that you have given unto us. And Lord, I love this line of a song that says, but I just want you to know that if you do nothing else, you've already done enough. And so, Father, I pray for each and every person as they meet, that you bring peace into their homes and thanksgiving in their heart. Let them live this week out with an attitude of gratitude. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.